Hello and welcome to the video. My name is Argent Sergeant and this gentleman with the funky facial hair right here is none other than Chinpachi. This video is the second in a series on Redstone and Rails. Now I did have an entire another video set up for this and fully recorded, ready to go, but I didn't like the way it was structured, so I've decided to scrap that and keep the Easter egg that I put into it to save for a little bit later on, seeing as it's the last video of the year. But these are the sacrifices we have to make to try and keep things structured, sensible and easy to understand. Hopefully I've achieved that goal. Now this all might look like quite a lot, but I've broken it down into different levels so that we can go through it bit by bit and eventually come to make our contraption. Or should I say contraptions? There are two that we will be making today, but the functional goal is effectively the same for both. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a system that allows us to send a minecart from a single location off to 3 destinations. Like that. Here's the second contraption that takes up a lot more space, but does effectively the same thing. There are a couple of advantages to this particular one, but we'll talk through those a little bit later on. Before we do that, we're going to be going through 5 levels of knowledge. First, we're going to be talking about solid and transparent blocks. Second, we're going to be talking about torches, lamps, and signal inversion. Then we'll be talking about sticky pistons. Level 4 is going to talk about redstone power to rails. We did cover this in the last video, so there are only a couple of little bits to add in. And level 5 talks about cheeky ways that you can get minecarts to do what you want when it doesn't look like the rails lend themselves to it very well. So first things first, in level 1, we're going to be talking about solid blocks versus transparent blocks. When we say solid and transparent, we're actually referring to solid and transparent in terms of redstone. Glass is actually transparent in terms of light, but the rest of these blocks, you can't actually see through them. So what we mean when we say solid block is we mean a block that can hold redstone power, like so. A transparent block doesn't. The only real reason why we're talking about transparent blocks in this video is because of circuits like this, where we have a redstone line that runs down what is effectively a set of stairs like this. If you have a solid block obstructing your redstone line in this position, that redstone at the bottom won't be powered. However, with a transparent block in the way, that redstone line will continue to carry down. With this in mind, it's worth noting that this glass block is totally interchangeable with slabs and stairs. When you power a solid block, it will apply power to redstone laid on blocks nearby, such as this one. You'll see this applied a little later on. While transparent blocks don't actually hold power, you can still run redstone lines up them if they're connected. In knowledge level 2, we're going to talk about the redstone torch, the redstone lamp, and signal inversion. So the important things to note here are the fact that the redstone torch is effectively a permanent source of redstone power. The second important thing to note is that the lamp is both a solid block and a redstone component, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. So, as a solid block, you are able to feed redstone power into the block, and the block will be powered. You place a torch on the ground, redstone line, and a lamp. You can, of course, simply place the torch next to the lamp, and it will power it. But we need to draw the distinction here between having the lamp powered and having it activated. A good way of testing whether or not a block is powered is to place a torch on it. Now the reason for that is because when the block that a torch is placed on is powered, it will turn the torch off. Turning off a redstone torch in this manner is referred to as inverting the signal. So this signal is on, we invert it, and it turns it off. If you place the torch on an unpowered block, the torch will turn on. So over here we can demonstrate that the redstone lamp is on, it's activated, but it's not necessarily powered. So if I place a torch on there, that torch is on. But if I place a torch on here, this stone block is powered, and therefore the torch turns off. The same applies to this lamp. That lamp is powered, that lamp is activated. Another important thing to note about the redstone torch is that it powers the block directly above it. And we can prove that the block is powered because there is a torch on it that is not on, and this lamp draws power from it. But the lamp isn't powered, it's just activated. You get the picture. We are able to invert a signal more than once, as many times as we want to, really. So we'll see that this lever here currently is powering this block. We can tell this block is powered because this lamp is on and this torch is off. We can see that there's a redstone line running out of this torch into this block, and there is a torch that is on top of this block. So what's going to happen when I flip this lever and unpower this block? Well, what's going to happen is that because this block is no longer being powered, that lamp is going to turn off and that torch is going to turn on. That torch will power this redstone line, which will power this block, which will turn off that torch, like this. So we're inverting the signal twice, because when that lever's in the on position, that's on. When it's off, that's off. So it's inverted twice. It's like it's not off. What? And there are obviously infinite variations to how you can go about doing this. One that you might see often is simply having a redstone torch powering a block, which unpowers a torch, which ensures that this block isn't powered, which means the torch placed on that block would be on. But just one more time for clarity, if clarity is really achievable, when I flip this lever, this redstone dust will be turned on, which will power this block. It will turn off that torch, which will mean that block is unpowered, which will mean that torch can be on, which will power that block, which will activate that lamp, like so. And so when we flip the switch again, this redstone dust will turn off, which will unpower that block, which will allow that torch to power up, which will power that block, which will unpower that torch, which will unpower that block, and therefore deactivate that lamp. There are a lot of words there, but the concept is fairly simple. It's just things turning things off, which turn things on, which turn things off, which turn things on. Sorry. So that was level 2. Level 3, it's a little bit more straightforward. This is a sticky piston. You probably know what a sticky piston does, but we'll go over it anyway. A sticky piston and a regular piston both extend when you put a redstone signal into them, and they retract when you remove the redstone signal. But the difference between a sticky piston and a regular piston is the fact that the sticky piston is sticky. The regular piston is not. So both blocks will push the corresponding stone blocks out, but the sticky piston, because it's sticky, will pull that block back with it. Otherwise, the stone will stay exactly where it is. Sticky pistons behave like lamps. You can feed redstone power directly into them, or you can power a block and place a sticky piston on top. If you run a redstone line along the back of a pair of pistons laid out like this, nothing happens. And same again if you do this. If somebody did this, their logic behind doing it would be, well, that line points into that piston, so if I put another one here, the line will point into that piston as well. It's not what happens. The redstone dust just kind of attracts to itself and then goes on to ignore the piston. So what you have to do is you have to be a little bit cleverer, and you have to use a repeater to direct the signal out of this line and into the pair of pistons like that. And that's how you power two pistons next to each other. But when you want to power two pistons on top of each other, sticking a repeater into the back of one won't work. Sticking dust into the back of the bottom one won't work either. What you have to do is you have to put a redstone pulse into the back of the top piston. It doesn't even matter if the block your repeater is on is solid or not. It still works, it just powers both of the pistons. You can do this with redstone dust as well. Why do we use repeaters? Well, because we need to put them next to each other. Using this configuration here, 3 dust, 3 repeaters, 6 pistons, and a lever, you can power 6 sticky pistons at once. Okay, why are we powering 6 sticky pistons at once? Well, here's what we're going to be using the sticky pistons on. We're going to be using it on some stone. We're going to be using it on some rails. Believe it or not, this actually works. How cool is that? And by putting them both together, we're going to be moving stone with rails on top of it. You might be able to see where I'm going with this. Knowledge level 4 goes as follows. We have powered rails, we have the redstone torch, and we have the regular rail. When you organise regular rails in a T configuration like this, the corner that this rail goes off to is its own preference, but you can change it by powering it, like that. So you can power the block underneath this rail here by putting a lever on it, or popping a torch underneath it. So it points to the left, now it points to the right. You will notice that I've used the quartz block here to demonstrate that a block is being provided with hidden power. For the purposes of our builds later on, a block that is white like this, with a component on top, is being provided with invisible permanent power by a torch placed underneath it. If a block is being provided with switched power, i.e. power that's being turned on or off, I'm going to place a black block underneath it to show that the signal can be either on or off based on lever inputs in the contraptions. Hopefully that will be helpful. That's level 4. That's nice and straightforward. Now for the fun bit. Here in the wonderful whimsical world of level 5 knowledge, we're going to be playing around with what we can get minecarts to do. We have a minecart here, and if we place it on this rail and send it along, it's going to go off to the left. Like that. If we want the minecart to go along here and then onto this rail, we can toggle this corner here so that it points that way. And the minecart, once it's built up some speed, will throw itself off of this rail onto here, and minecarts are pretty heavy, so they've got some forward momentum. So it's going to keep going this way, just like this. Handy. So if I jump in this minecart and push it along, I'll go straight off this side. If I toggle this lever, I'll go off to the right instead. So that goes to the right. That goes straight ahead. Let's not labour the point any longer. That was pretty straightforward. And you can obviously carry this concept forward multiple times, like this. Goes off one way. Goes off right to the end because of how they're laid out. If I toggle that one, minecart will go off onto here and turn that way. Wonderful. That is the concept on which this first contraption here works. Our other contraption works on the concept that you can fall off of rails and onto other rails. So I'm going to place a minecart on top of this rail here. It will go up. It will turn around and it will fall through this hole here. It is important that this hole is at least 3 blocks long, and you'll see the reason for that in a moment. Off it goes. Up and through the hole. And it just keeps on going. The reason why this hole needs to be 3 blocks wide is because we don't want to stop that cart while it's travelling at speed into the hole. We need it to carry its forward momentum so that when it hits these powered rails, it keeps on moving. I could watch that go all day, but it's not quite as fun as this one. Okay, so in green here we have a piece of bonus information, which is basically something that I'm not going to be using in the final contraption, but was kind of fun to put in anyway. And here it is. It's a little bit of an overlap between a concept that we already visited. When I put this cart down, if it goes that way, it's going to flip back on itself and go down the hole. But if I push it that way, it's going to go over that rail and back down the hole anyway. So it doesn't matter which way this cart is travelling when it lands in this circuit. It's always going to end up going back the same way. And if I push that way, off it goes. Wonderful. What's more important is a concept we touched on last episode, which was that when you push a moving minecart onto an unpowered powered rail, it comes to a complete stop. This cart is going to go up here, round, down onto these rails. It's going to accelerate, and then it's going to come to a sudden stop when it hits these powered rails. Like that. That's what we're going to be using. That's knowledge level 5, and these are just the ways I've played with these concepts in particular. They're really fun. I enjoy mucking about with them. So there are multiple combinations and ways that you can make your rails work for you in this manner. So be inventive, have a little bit of fun with it. I certainly did. On to the contraptions. Now, each one of these is actually comprised of 2 contraptions. And this one on the left, you'll see, is the same in each box. And in these 2 boxes, they are already pre-built. And the reason for that is because this is the contraption we built in the last episode in the series. And that comprises a button, a monostable circuit, and a secondary pulse to power these rails. It's just a quick way of sending the carts off for demonstration purposes. And here's how the first one works. Simply put, each of these levers controls each of these corners. This one controls the left-hand one, as you can see just about there in the left. And this one controls, well, the middle one, not the right-hand one, but the middle one. Like that. Got rid of the minecarts, but depending on which way they're switched, they will send your cart to a different destination each time. That will go off to number 1. That will go off to number 2. And that will go off to number 3. Here's how you build it. First things first, let's get our rails down. Destination number 3, destination number 2, destination number 1. Permanent power. Permanent power. Permanent power. Permanent power. Permanent power. Switched power. Switched power. Now let's get those torches in. 1 torch, 2 torch, 3 torch, 4 torch, 5 torch, 6 torch. So, currently, these are all switched on. To make it so that these black blocks can be turned off, I'm going to pop a repeater there and there. I'm going to put activator rails on the permanent power. Oh, torch there. And now they're all activated. You can see that because they're lit up. That's a nice, beautiful red colour and not a dark black browny colour. And then regular rail, regular rail, regular rail. And then I put more rails down like that. Now I need to run some wires to this repeater and this repeater. Here's my first wire. And I'm going to put a quartz block up there with a lever on it. And you'll see that powers the left-hand rail. Same thing here. Dust, 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 dust. And a quartz block on top with a lever. And that will power the right-hand rail. Beautiful. Let's cover it all up. Ah, but we've encountered a problem. Because if we put that block there, this will no longer work. Because it cuts off that signal. So what are we to do? We'll just divert the signal a little bit so that we can get away with putting a transparent block there. Just like this. Cheeky. Doing the same this side. Careful to leave that open so that we can put our stairs in. Any block in the middle. And check it still works. That one. And that one. And that's this contraption. It's really easy. You can duplicate this multiple times by making it wider, or indeed adding further branches up the line. But I can see that becoming more and more complicated as it continues to branch out. The other disadvantage I can see with this is the fact that when you come back from wherever you've been, it's only in one configuration of these levers that you can actually go back to this destination and get off. And that's this configuration. If that rail's that way, and that rail's that way, then obviously it means your minecart is going to end up somewhere else if it comes back from any of these destinations. Bedlam, and it's complicated, and it's confusing, and I'm too dumb to figure out how to resolve it. And as you can see here, I'm a great lover of complicated solutions. So this one uses my dropping through the floor mechanic that we covered earlier. So when I hit this button, you'll see that the cart that it dispenses will just run straight along the middle and to wherever it's going. So if I toggle this lever, our first set of pistons will come back. You remember that from earlier? Our cart will drop onto here and it will go up this ramp on the left onto the other destination. There it goes. And if we put that one back across and open up the second hole, the cart will go down that hole, through those rails, and up the third ramp. And it doesn't matter which way these levers are configured. If you come back along any track, you're going to end up back on that unpowered powered rail over there. Observe. That one goes straight up the middle. Easy. Fine. This one, see what I did? Your cart is going to go along these rails, up these powered rails, up more powered rails, and up this ramp, along and back down, straight onto the deployer. And if either of these holes are open, the cart is going to behave in much the same way. There it goes. You'll see it do the same as it falls through the first hole. Wonderful. So that's what I like about this one. The added benefit of it is that if you wanted to add more options for places to go, you would just add more holes at different lengths along this area. So the design gets longer as your options increase, which lends itself really well to a nice traditional looking kind of railway station because, you know, they're quite long. So let's get to building it. Repeaters in the back, dust on the floor, do not connect those two, and now a torch underneath. Like that. Like that. Oh, this was a mistake. Ah! You fool. You utter fool. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, what a twit. Alright, I've had a break. I've had my J2O. I've had my ice cream. I've had an entire Jamaica ginger cake to myself. And I'm absolutely stuffed. But I'm ready to give this another go. This will be my third attempt. There's going to be my hole. There's going to be my next hole. And now, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Gonna set on my rack of 6 sticky pistons. Put the repeaters into the back. Join those together with redstone dust. And make sure they're clear before you pop a torch underneath to power them up. Same again here. Let's get some rails across here. And I would like some permanent power here. So I know that I want the other destinations to land here and here. Build my staircases going down from here. Ceiling, I'm making it 3 blocks high because who doesn't want a ceiling that's 3 blocks high? And this space I'm going to hollow out all the way underneath the deployer. Okay, and now I'd like some permanent power about here and about here. Torches underneath, and those blocks are now powered. Running rails down these ramps. And now let's think about where we want these to line up. I'm going to want some permanent power there and some permanent power there. Don't forget to put the torches underneath the permanent power. Let's go along a couple more blocks and we pop up again. I would like this block to have permanent power. That block is to be permanently powered. And I'm going to put some powered rails along like this, going off to one side like that. And some powered rails down like this, going off to the other side. And you'll see that powered rails line up perfectly with where my holes are going to be. Let's get some powered rails going up here. Let's bring that out one more. A long run of blocks along here. So they're going to drop down about there. Well, so you'll notice this one goes taller than this one. I'm just going to leave it. Some more powered rails along there. I'm going to have to power this block using a lever. Just slap one on the side and turn it on. The thing we have to do is get the switches to these pistons going. Okay, so now we have our switches in place. All we have to do is figure out how exactly we're going to go about powering and unpowering these pistons in connection with these switch inputs. Because of the amount of space we've got to be quite clever about it. And that's something I've really struggled with. So bear with me a sec and hopefully I'll get you to the other side of this no problem. Okay, so we're going to work on the right hand side one first. And I'm going to excavate a staircase that goes down to this block down here. Now the reason for that is because I want to invert the pulse twice and make it so that the off position on the lever is also the off position on the pistons. So I'm going to simply run this redstone line along here and that will connect up this switch like that. Fantastic. I'm chuffed about that. With this one, I'm going to invert the signal here and I'm going to start a redstone line down there. Clear out a little bit more space. I'm going to run a redstone line like that into that repeater and that's our job done. Except for, you see how that redstone dust down there is touching towards that torch? That means I'm going to have interference between my two circuits. Weird, right? So, like I said earlier on, we can solve that. And we can solve that using the humble repeater. Lay my next dust there, pop a repeater there. And now this repeater is only affected by what pulse is present in this dust here and not by either of these torches. So if we get back up here, we can see neither of these switch inputs have an effect on the other. So we're going to turn this one on and this one will turn on and off freely. And when we turn this one on, this one can turn on and off freely. Great. The beauty of having a torch positioned here is because I'm using stairs as surrounds for these, I can place stairs as a surround here and I'm not going to have any interference, and the stairs aren't going to cut off my redstone circuit, which is great news. After placing that block there, we have this system completely buttoned up. Here's our test. Turn them both on. Send that to destination middle. That'll take us off to destination left. Or will it? I don't have enough powered rails. Completely buttoned up. This will take us off to a destination on the left. This will take us off to a destination on the right. Yes. And now for a quick check to see whether or not they all go back the other way. That's one. That's two. And that's three. Great news. And that's pretty much that. I really hope you enjoyed it. There's a couple of little Easter eggs that I created in my previous revision of this video that I'm going to be sharing with you on the outro of this particular one. Last video of the year, so I thought I'd create something pretty for you to enjoy, to send off this event that has been 2020 and move on to the next one. I'd be grateful to hear from you with any input or ideas or things that I've missed or things I've perhaps overlooked in my design. I appreciate that this may be needlessly complicated. For the time being, this has been Argent Sergeant, and I'm looking forward to the new year. Thanks very much for having me. Take care. Happy New Year. Argent Sergeant checking in post-production. Turns out it's the 1st of January, so not the last video of 2020, but the first video of 2021. I hope you've had a wonderful time, and don't forget to fear the Creeper Angel.